Hey everyone, Chris here, the RC Geek, coming to you from the shop, and today we're taking a look at the Freewing MiG-29. This is a really nice big model, comes out of the box, looks fantastic. They've got the digital camo on here, which is really cool, and it's a twin 80mm EDF. Now the size is extremely impressive. They've got really nice scale landing gear, which I really appreciate, and the cockpit is most all hardened plastic in there, so the likelihood of gatoring is much less likely. I do wish the pilot was a little bit bigger, but that's another story. So anyways, with respect to the assembly itself, the airplane went together quite simply. It's really large, comes in a really large box, but it's broken down into the major components, right? You do have to glue the forward nose section on, and that starts first, and there's 4 clips that you also have to glue once you've attached the nose to the airframe. I used foam tack here, and so just simply apply the foam tack to the 2 sides, touch the 2 together, pull them apart, let it set briefly, and then push it on for the final gluing. And then I glued the clips on with the foam tack as well. There is a wood plate that goes in the nose. I highly recommend putting that in because that does help strengthen that joint there. And also, if you're using smaller capacity batteries, that's where you can place the batteries further forward. So once you glue the nose on, it goes on to the tails. You insert the pivot rod, cinch that down with 2 screws, and then you slide the horizontal tail in place, and then it's just held in place with a collar. And make sure you've got everything tight there so that there's no lateral play in the tail at all. And then from there, dorsals, and so those just screw into place. They fit really easily. One thing about the horizontal tails, this came from the first batch. They sent out replacement servos. I'm assuming if you're getting one of these in the newer batches, you won't have to replace the servos. But in my case, I ended up ultimately putting in 2 hitec D85 digital servos because I didn't want to have any concerns at all on the elevator servos at all. So just keep that in mind. I do think that the servos for the tails are a bit marginal. This is a really large airplane. It's got some weight to it, so you definitely want to make sure that you've got something good back there. So once the tails were on, you slide the wings on over the spar, fasten them in place with 2 screws each, and that's basically it. They've got a nice multi-connector cable for the flaps and ailerons. So then once the airplane was all together, of course, it's on to the radio setup. Now, the airplane on the bench is extremely impressive to look at. It's really large. The finish on it is really nice. It's a really nice smooth foam and paint finish that they have on the airplane, which is fantastic. One thing I did want to mention with respect to the setup, I already talked about the servos, but also for the flaps and ailerons, I've added just a touch of reflex in the flaps and ailerons to offset some of the camber that's out here at the tip. So if you split the difference for the ailerons such that half of the thickness of the aileron is protruding above the wing tip, that's where I'd recommend setting up your flaps and ailerons. Also, one of the modifications that I did, I had to put center burners in here. These are my 36mm inrunner center burner designs. Fit perfectly onto the motors, and those tail cones just simply clamp in place over the inrunner motor. They're really simple to install, and they really look fantastic in the airplane, especially in the air. That really looks convincing as you see it going from takeoff into those vertical maneuvers with the full burner. It's awesome. Now, with respect to the controls, I found that the airplane does want a bit of elevator deflection to it, but I ended up reducing the aileron rates compared to what they recommend. So for the ailerons, I'm at 25mm up and down with 10% expo. For the elevator, 37mm up and down with 10% expo. And I want to note that there's about a 3 to 4mm up elevator deflection for trim. If you place the CG at the location they recommend, you are going to need a bit of up elevator, and they do mention that in the instructions as well. And then for the rudder, 45mm left to right with 25% expo, and that's to help desensitize the steering. And then for the flaps, 22mm for the mid and 40mm for the full flap deflection. and there's no elevator mix required on the model at all. Now, one of the things I did want to mention, when I originally set the model up, I was not happy with the symmetry of the tails with the stock servos. The geometry just wasn't working out to give me exactly what I wanted, so I ended up setting the elevators up on two separate channels, and then that way I could get them to exactly match perfectly. And so with respect to the CG, it's really interesting. So Freewing has provided a CG indication molded into the foam, and I found that that CG location felt about perfect to me. If you pick up the airplane with your fingertips there, you want it to be about level, and it felt great in the air. So I definitely recommend starting there. You can move back from there if you want. I wouldn't recommend going any further forward with the CG. And based on the instructions, that equates to 140 millimeters as measured from the wing root leading edge aft. You have those CG indications there in the foam. Just pick up the airplane from there. You don't really need to worry about measurements at all. So I'm using two Roaring Top 6S 6250 milliamp hour batteries, and those are placed as far back as I can realistically place them inside the hatch area. And so that ends up giving the CG perfectly on the airplane at that location. With respect to flying the model, guys, this is an extremely impressive flying airplane. It looks fantastic. It maneuvers much like the real airplane in the air. It just has such great presence because of the size. The performance is really scale, and you know, with the paint scheme, it actually shows up in the air pretty well, and it just looks awesome. The airplane is quick at full throttle. It's got great vertical performance, and so I've got really no complaints at all with the power system. It rolls nice and axially. It'll do point rolls, you know, anything you want. Where the airplane I found really excels is it will land beautifully. It slows down really nicely with the flaps down. It sets into a nice nose-up attitude on the approach, and it'll just sit there, and you control your rate of descent with the power, and it'll just land really nicely. Now the model does come with ordnance. I didn't actually fly it with the ordnance on, but from what I understand in terms of the pitch change or anything like that, there's not much change there. It mostly just impacts your speed. Anyways, let's take this out to the field. We'll give you guys a flight, let you see how it goes, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap this up.
Take it over. I'm going to line this plane to the radius.
Alright guys, so there we have the MiG-29 from Freewing at Motion RC. Beautiful airplane, guys. I really like the paint scheme. The finish on it, it's really smooth. The airplane flies great. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to have in the hangar. I'm hopeful that this is kind of the start of a trend that we start to see some larger twin 80mm airframes because they fly fantastically. Transporting it is a little bit awkward because of the size, because I like to transport things in a single piece, but I still can do it. The nose comes off, makes it easy enough to do. I slide it into my van nose first and it does just fine. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to follow along on social media at the RC Geek. Subscribe. Oh, and if you're looking for center burners for the airplane, this is my 36mm inrunner design, and those are available at thercgeek.com/centerburner. Until next time, guys, I'll see you at the field. Comrade, MiG-29, too much vodka. I disappoint myself sometimes. Most times.
Yeah.
Let's go home. It's digital. No pixels were harmed in the making of this video.